Welcome back. I'm Ian Masters, and this is Background Briefing, available 24/7 at backgroundbriefing.org. And joining us now, David Phillips, the Director of the Peacebuilding and Human Rights Program at the Institute for the Study of Human Rights at Columbia University, and a former Senior Advisor and Foreign Affairs expert to the United States Department of State during the administrations of Presidents Clinton, Bush, and Obama. And also joining us is Madeleine Joelson, the Executive Director of the Turkish Democracy Project. Together they are the co-authors of a new report from Columbia's Peacebuilding and Human Rights Program, An Uncertain Ally, Turkey's Response to Russia's War on Ukraine. Welcome to Background Briefing, David Phillips and Madeleine Joelson.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thanks, Ian.
Well, thanks for joining us. And let me begin with David. What do you make of Erdogan's threats now against Finland and Sweden joining NATO? Of course, Putin is threatening Finland, and they've already cut off electricity to Finland. But, I mean, we are living in the age of spoilers. We already have Viktor Orban in Hungary, the spoiler to the concerted effort by the EU to cut off Russian imports of oil. We even have a spoiler in the US Senate in the form of Senator Rand Paul, who's holding up aid to Ukraine at the very moment when Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and a delegation are visiting Zelensky in Kyiv. So how much of a spoiler could Erdogan be in terms of Finland's and Sweden's entry into NATO?
Acceptance of new NATO members requires unanimity among existing members of the alliance. So technically, it is within Erdogan's capacity to block Finland and Sweden from joining the alliance. They're still figuring out in Ankara how they're going to respond, but their reason for suggesting an obstruction is patently absurd. Erdogan has called Sweden a safe haven for terrorists because Kurdish refugees have resettled there in some numbers. It's important at the council meetings that the rest of the NATO members make it crystal clear to Erdogan that he can't stand in the way, and if he tries to, there will be additional penalties against Turkey.
So, Madeleine, according to the report that you and David have done, some of the signals that Erdogan has been sending, particularly when he sent his close business associate, Ethem Sankak, to Moscow to deliver messages to Russian officials. His emissary appeared on the Russian news channel RBC, and he called NATO a cancerous tumor. Mm-hmm. That's pretty extreme for a member state of NATO, isn't it?
I think I would describe my reaction to that bit of news as shock rather than surprise. I think that if you pay attention to the way that Turkey has behaved, rather than the things that Turkey has said throughout this war on Ukraine, both Sanjik's comments in Russia and this most recent move by Erdogan to try to block, or at least signal his intention to block, Sweden and Finland's membership, these are not isolated incidents. I think these are patterns of a pretty consistent effort, not only to undermine NATO's would-be unified response to this invasion, but also to signal, I think, something that anybody who's been paying attention to Erdogan has known for a long time, which is that he is looking to Putin as a model for authoritarianism. And he's been copying his homework, I think, for a long time in that regard.
Well, your report refers to this compact as the Axis of Autocracy. But given that Erdogan recently visited both the UAE and Saudi Arabia to sort of repair the damage after the murder and dismemberment of Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate in Turkey. So you could, surely, David, you could expand the Axis autocracy. It's not just Erdogan and Putin. It's also MBS and MBZ, is it not?
There's a clear divide right now between democracies and autocracies. And then there are other countries that are sitting on the fence, waiting to see which way the war in Ukraine goes. The fact that India is continuing to buy oil and gas from Russia allows Putin to replenish his coffers to the tune of about $1 billion a day. So there are several countries that have their national self-interest in mind. There are other countries that are picking sides based on an ideological division. We're clearly at an inflection point in world affairs. Our country is going to be counted as a free and open society with the EU and NATO members, with the exception of Turkey, or are they going to be on the side of autocracy? It's important that President Biden make their choice clear and transparent, because the U.S. needs to know who it can rely on. Turkey, as suggested in the title of our report, is an uncertain ally. When it decided to buy S-400 surface-to-air missiles from Russia, it made a decision that it was hedging its bets and that it couldn't be counted on as a member of the alliance to oppose Russia in the event of conflict.
And Madeleine, it seems irrational to many analysts what Putin is doing in Ukraine. However, as David just pointed out, he's still making money out of oil. In fact, the price of oil has skyrocketed. And so that's filling the coffers of both MBS and MBZ as well as Putin. So is this a kind of subtext that we're missing out on here, that they could recycle this money back into US elections? Already it looks as if there's going to be a recession in Europe. Is Putin playing a longer game here than we are thinking in terms of watching the poor performance of his military?
That is a good question, probably one that David is better equipped to answer than I am, as I spend a lot more time studying Erdogan's motives than Putin's.
Okay, well, let's David, step in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Putin is hedging his bets. He knows that the free world opposes him. The U.S. has led a very robust sanctions regime. There have been 6 packages of sanctions that both NATO countries, with the exception of Turkey, the EU, and G7 countries have implemented to inflict financial pain on Russia and to compel Putin to change his course. But Putin doesn't seem inclined to react to sanctions. It affects the Russian people first and foremost. And in the past, Putin hasn't shown any interest in the welfare of his citizens. His primary interest is his own power and preserving the wealth and privilege of the Russian oligarchs who support him financially.
So, Madeleine, let's talk about the Russian oligarchs and how much money they're parking in Turkey. Turkey, of course, is also angling to get more Russian tourists. They had, 7 million or something in 2019. I'm not sure that a lot of tourists are going to be coming if the economy in Russia is bad. But the other thing that you brought out in your report, Madeleine, is that a lot of these oligarchs, including Roman Abramovich, have parked their super yachts there. He's also invested 1.2 billion in Turkey, along with parking the Eclipse and the Solaris, these 2 big super yachts, and then a whole bunch of other Russian oligarchs, Nessus Molchanov and Deripaska and Makhmudov and Alkaperov and Arkady Rottenberg, Putin's cellist friend. So this looks like a real haven. I mean, I know they're laundering their money and parking their money in the Gulf, but I didn't realize they were also parking it in Turkey.
Oh, yeah. I think this is, when I mentioned sort of a pattern of NATO disunity coming from the general direction of Turkey, this is exactly the kind of thing that I'm talking about. While almost all of the NATO alliance has sort of scrambled to make the cost of this war, to make it felt by Putin and his closest allies, Turkey, Erdogan specifically, of course, has done everything that he can to counter that trend. So, as you say, Turkey has become a safe haven for Russian money, Russian investments, Russian oligarchs. I think that the total cost of all of the yachts currently harbored in Turkey, the Russian yachts must be something over like $300 million. At one point, Turkey started offering citizenship in exchange for a certain amount of investment to Russian oligarchs. And I think that this this particular correspondence of oligarchs points to a much broader pattern that we need to start paying attention to, which is that both Putin and Erdogan use these kinds of powerful figures to not only signal support for each other and undermine the efforts of countries like the United States, Britain, as they impose sanctions, but they also use them to enhance their own autocratic agendas at home.
And David Phillips, what happened to Erdogan? Because he initially opposed or criticized the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Obviously, he has financial ties to Russia, but he also has financial ties to Ukraine. And the Turkish produced Bayraktar TB2 armed drone, which was proven very successful in the Caucasus in the recent war between Armenia and Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh. It's also proved to be very effective in Ukraine. I understand that they're actually manufacturing it now under license in Ukraine. I think the company is owned by Erdogan's son-in-law, is it not?
Yes, it is.
We should be crystal clear, Ian, about a motive. Turkey is driven by the goal of enhancing its regional power and gaining economic benefits. It doesn't view the war in Ukraine as an act of aggression, which is illegal and against international law. It views it as an opportunity to burnish its credentials and to assert itself in international diplomacy. The idea that Erdogan is playing a mediator and that Turkey has hosted a series of sessions with Russian and Ukrainian officials is shocking to me. Turkey doesn't have the credentials to do that. Mediation needs to be done by an authoritative international body. And Turkey doesn't have isn't responsible or proven as an impartial mediator. So its role there shouldn't be taken seriously. It's just part of a broader plan by Erdogan to assert Turkey's role and to establish Turkey as an international player with credibility.
So, Madeleine, what can be done then to pull him over, Erdogan? I mean, he's obviously not a member in good standing of NATO, and we started out talking about the extent to which he's trying to block the entry of Finland and Sweden into NATO. So is there anything that can be done? I know his economy is a disaster, and he's been an absolutely boneheaded steward of the economy. Inflation is something like 70%. It's incredible. And the Turkish dinar has dropped in value, I think, over 20%? You probably have better figures than I do. But
absolutely tanking.
So what can be done to either pull him over or, short of having him voted out, it's next year is the elections, right?
Yeah, I think I would echo what David said at the beginning, which is that it's absolutely vital that the rest of the NATO members don't allow for this. I guess it's vital that they present a unified front. I think it's important that we are clear on Turkey's reasons for this move. I think on the one hand, as we've discussed, it allows him to signal his support for Putin and for Russia, and so we should have no illusions about that. We should have that is, NATO countries should hold no quarter to this claim of harboring terrorists. When Erdogan says that, he means exiled journalists who have been exiled from his own authoritarian regime. And I think it's important to keep in mind that this move, while disastrous for NATO, is really a win-win for Erdogan because not only does it allow him to signal that support for Putin, but it allows him to whip up his sort of ultra-nationalist base in Turkey, who react very strongly to any mention of terrorism or the PKK, which is the violent extremist arm of the Kurdish separatist movement. I would just advise NATO members to keep that motive in the forefront of their minds and recognize that Turkey needs NATO more than NATO needs Turkey.
Let me just clarify one thing here, Ian. I think it's a misnomer to call the PKK a violent separatist movement. It does not support an independent state of Kurdistan. It has rejected violence repeatedly. The only reason there's ongoing conflict between Turkey and the PKK is because Turkey refuses to accept peace overtures.
Fair enough. It's a desert.
The international community keeps the PKK on a list of foreign terrorist organizations. It's been years since the PKK has been involved in terror activities internationally. So we really need to see things as they are, not accept Erdogan's propaganda as truth.
Fair enough. I'll accept that correction, David.
So then, just in closing, let me start with David and then Madeleine. You refer to the compact, or whatever you want to call it, between Putin and Erdogan as the axis of authoritarians. It also could be the axis of kleptocrats, couldn't it?
Both Putin and Erdogan maintain their power through a circle of oligarchs who benefit financially from their close association with the leaders. Both countries are defined by anti-democratic government and hostility to human rights, including minority rights. So they're able to keep their power because of the concentration of wealth and because of an ideology which promotes polarization and division in their society. The voters in Turkey are going to have an opportunity to have their voices heard in 2023 when there's a presidential election. I don't envision any time soon when Russian voters will have a chance to express their dissatisfaction. But we have to recognize that dictators need popular support. And as long as the Turkish and Russian people don't oppose their leaders and demand regime change, we're likely to see continued autocracy in these countries.
And Madeleine, obviously, we've seen how Putin controls the media, and democracy is a facade behind which, of course, you have autocracy. And the same is true in Erdogan's Turkey, and we just saw the election of Bongbong Marcos in the Philippines. And again, it's control of the media that seems to be the key here. In this upcoming presidential election, the chance to get rid of Erdogan, what's the chances then of, I mean, apart from the fact that the Turkish people must be feeling the pain of inflation, but can they be educated through alternative media to the extent of the kleptocracy that's similar to what Putin is doing? I mean, the reason that the military and the Russian military are doing so poorly is that he runs a mafia state that's so corrupt that it's hollowed out even the military.
It's certainly going to be a challenge. 90% of Turkish media is controlled either by the Turkish government or by oligarchs who are closely aligned with the president. So, as you suggest, it is an uphill battle for free elections. It's not just a matter of free media. It's also a matter of accepting defeat. It's a matter of intimidation at the polls. Erdogan's sort of total state capture has made it very, very difficult for the opposition. I don't think it's impossible. I agree with David that the Turkish people have a shot in June 2023 to have their voices heard, but they need a lot of international support for their democratic institutions in the meantime.
Well, I thank you both for joining us here today, David Phillips and Madeleine Joelson.
Thank you so much.
And again, I've been speaking with David Phillips, who's the director of the Peace Building and Human Rights Program at the Institute for the Study of Human Rights at Columbia University and a former senior advisor and foreign affairs expert to the United States Department of State during the administrations of Presidents Clinton, Bush, and Obama, and also Madeleine Joelson, who's the executive director of the Turkish Democracy Project. And together they are the co-authors of a new report from Columbia University's Peace Building and Human Rights Program, An Uncertain Ally, Turkey's Response to Russia's War on Ukraine. We're going to take a brief station break. We're back discussing how Central Asia could be the key to driving a wedge between Russia and